Hello, our dolls have spent 2 nights at McGinty's, and Annabelle, Bobby, and Tilly May have price tags on them. Also, they've decided or have figured out that dolls are coming up missing at night. Chapter 11 is called The All-Girl Posse. Annabelle, calm down, said Elsie-Pad. Remember, don't worry, be happy. How can you not worry about this, replied Annabelle. It's worrisome. If you want to worry about something, worry about how you guys are going to get home, said Dakota Jane. She shook her ponytail. I'm worried about that too, cried Annabelle. And now I'm worried that one of us will disappear before we can figure out how to find our way back home. Excuse me, I couldn't help overhearing you. Annabelle turned to see Angelica approaching. Really, I didn't mean to eavesdrop, said Angelica, but Annabelle, I think you should try to accept the fact that you're here for good. I've been here longer than any other doll in the store, and as far as I know, no one has ever escaped from McGinty's. Annabelle had a sudden inspiration. Maybe the missing dolls escaped. Maybe that's what happened to them. Angelica, Dakota Jane, Elsie-Pad, and Marisol, standing in a ragged line before Annabelle and Tiffany, shook their heads. I don't think so, said Marisol. No way, said DJ. Impossible, said Angelica. Nope, said Elsie-Pad, and added, Annabelle, remember, the dolls here want to be sold. They want to go to their forever homes. You guys are the only ones who want to escape. Besides, Elsie-Pad waved her hand around the store, and Annabelle knew it was her way of saying, how could a doll get out of McGinty's? There must be some way, said Tiffany. It couldn't happen during the day, said Elsie-Pad. How would you go down the escalator? Without being seen, added Marisol. It couldn't happen during the night, said DJ. There's a watchman downstairs. Stationed right beside the entrance, added Angelica. Really, said Elsie-Pad, the only way out of here is in a paper bag. What? Said Tiffany. Someone has to buy you, Angelica explained. Annabelle cringed. That was not going to happen to her. And I'm going to pause for a second because I think the traffic outside is a little loud. Hang on. Okay. That was not going to happen to her, or to her sister or brother, or Tiffany or Bailey. They were not going to leave McGinty's after all this time, only to wind up in the wrong house. That does it, said Annabelle, and she stamped her foot. We have to get out of here. But how are you going to do that, asked DJ, who, Annabelle thought, looked intrigued by the thought of escape. Annabelle wanted desperately to impress her, but she felt her shoulders slump. I don't know. She glanced at Tiffany. The main problem, said her best friend, is not that we don't know how to escape. It's that we don't know how to get back to the Palmer's house. At the thought of the Palmer's house, Annabelle nearly let loose a sob. It was at this awful moment, feeling helpless and trapped, that Annabelle became aware of a low hum. What's that? She asked. What's what? Asked Marisol. That sound? Marisol turned in a slow circle, and her eyes settled on a shelf of Dr. Sue dolls, each wired to the back of her cardboard box, along with her doctor's kit and plastic animals. The shut-ins, said Marisol. I think they heard about the disappearance. They're spreading the word among themselves. Annabelle listened hard and realized that the hum was a chorus of muted voices. Gone, she heard one doll say. Gone into the night. Into the light, said another. What, in a fright? Said a third. Can't hear you, said a fourth. After a fight? Do you know what this reminds me of, guys? Making a connection to that game called Telephone, where you say something. We've played it in class before. Pardon, said a fifth. A fight? Who had a fight? DJ leaned over and whispered to Annabelle. They can't hear very well, not through all that cardboard and cellophane. And here's that line of Dr. Sue dolls. They're apt to spread rumors, added Angelica. Annabelle looked from the nervous shut-ins to her friends and then up and down the aisle. She realized that unlike the previous nights, when the atmosphere in the toy department had been cheerful, almost celebratory, the dolls now seemed subdued and quiet. Where's the baseball game? Tiffany asked. No game tonight, said Dakota Jane. No one felt like playing, replied Elsipad. Besides, a bunch of the boys have formed a posse, said Marisol. A posse? What for? Asked Annabelle. And Tilly May looked up from her seat on a miniature rocking horse to say, What's a posse? It's a group of men the sheriff can call on to maintain law and order, replied Dakota Jane, twirling a lariat. And remember, a lariat is a kind of rope that's got a circle at the end of it for catching and roping cattle in the rodeo. Tiffany made a face. A group of men? What men? And what sheriff? Asked Annabelle. Well, there's no sheriff here, of course, said DJ, although now that I think of it, someone should make a sheriff doll. A woman sheriff doll, said Tiffany. But who's in this posse? Asked Annabelle. All the Bailey dolls and any other boys who want to join, replied DJ. They're calling themselves the Bailey Boys, explained Elsipad. Said Tiffany. I wonder just which Bailey had this all-boy idea. What are the boys going to do? Asked Angelica. Look for Mom Funcraft, said Marisol, and the other missing dolls. And make sure no one else goes missing, said Elsipad. They're guarding and patrolling, said DJ. How come only the boys get to do this? Asked Tiffany. What's wrong with girls? Elsipad shrugged. Nothing. The boys had the idea first. Well, doesn't anybody think this is wrong? Girls can guard and patrol just as well as boys, said Tiffany. Better, spoke up Tilly, and everyone turned to look at her, but she was busy combing the horse's mane. Yeah, that's right, said Dakota Jane. Tell everyone about Sump, Annabelle said importantly to Tiffany, and Tiffany did so. Wow, said Elsipad, Dakota Jane, and Marisol. Angelica looked fascinated. I never heard of such a thing, she said. Not in all my born days. I propose, said Tiffany, climbing on top of a building block and raising her fist in the air, that we form an all-girl posse, and that Annabelle and I make the rest of you, she pointed at Angelica, Marisol, Elsipad, and Dakota Jane, temporary Sump deputies. Our mission will be to search and guard, protect and patrol. Are you in or are you out? We're in, cried Annabelle, Marisol, Elsipad, Dakota Jane, and Angelica. Angelica adding, I never dreamed I'd be deputized. I'm in too, said Tilly May. Annabelle smiled at her. You can be a junior deputy. Okay, let's go round up some more girls, said Tiffany. Wait, before we start, said Elsipad, we should have a briefing. What? Said Tiffany. The dolls who have been here the longest should give you new dolls the lay of the land. Tiffany looked highly impatient, but she stepped off the block. All right, I guess that makes sense, she said. Let's start with the night watchman. You said he's stationed by the entrance. Does he stay there all the time? As far as we know, answered Dakota Jane. She turned to Angelica. Has he ever come upstairs? Angelica shook her head. Not since I've been here. Then that tells us two things, said Tiffany. We don't have to worry about running into the watchman unless we go downstairs. And the watchman isn't the kidnapper. Okay, what else do we need to know? What about Charlie and the cleaning crew, asked Annabelle. Where do they go after they've been in the toy department? Everyone looked at Angelica. I'm not certain about that, she said. I know they don't come back here, but I guess they could be anywhere else in the store. Well, the good thing about the cleaning crew is that they're noisy, said Tiffany. We should be able to hear them before we see them. We'll just have to keep our ears open while we're out searching and guarding. And protecting and patrolling, added Elsipad. Are there any other humans in the store at nighttime, asked Tiffany. I don't think so, said Marisol, but you do have to be on the lookout for something else. What's that, said Annabelle, as an unpleasant feeling came over her. What do you think it is? Sorry. Marisol lowered her voice and whispered, Rats! Rats! Shrieked Annabelle, and even Tiffany looked nervous. The other dolls nodded. But we haven't seen any rats, said Tiffany. Don't worry. They don't bother us when we're all out at nighttime, said Dakota Jane. There are too many of us. But they're around the store, believe me, added Elsipad, in dark corners and quiet places. Could a rat make off with a doll? Asked Tiffany. Maybe the kidnapper is a rat. It's possible, replied Marisol. Of course, a rat couldn't make off with me. I'm much too big, but you smaller dolls? Tiffany was quiet for a moment. Then she said, So, what are the Bailey boys doing, and where are they? She looked around the strangely quiet toy department. Half of them, replied Elsipad. We're going to go to the top of the escalator to try to see the first floor from up there. They're hoping to spy on the watchman. They want to see if he does anything unusual. The rest of them are supposed to be searching this floor for the missing dolls. Then what I think we, as members of SELP, should do, said Tiffany, is split up like the boys did. Half of us can search and explore this floor too. There will be plenty for everyone to do, but the other half of us will stay here and guard the toy department. We should probably watch the babies extra closely, since they don't know how to protect themselves. Good idea, said DJ. And so the night passed quickly and spookily. The members of SELP rounded up a large group of girl volunteers. Annabelle, Angelica, and Tilly, along with other dolls who were old or fragile, remained behind, with Marisol for protection, to guard the toy department, while Tiffany, Elsipad, Dakota Jane, and a large group of Tiffany Funcrafts and other plastic dolls set off to search the second floor of McGinty's. Annabelle spent much of the night pacing the aisle of the toy department, hand in hand with Tilly May. She jumped at every sound she heard, every movement she caught out of the corner of her eye. But the hours passed, and Annabelle was able to call, 2 o'clock and all's well. 3 o'clock and all's well. Until finally she saw the gray light of dawn through the store window. The rest of the all-girl posse spent the night roaming housewares, menswear, lingerie, and shoes, on the lookout for rodents and other kidnappers. Dakota Jane drove the truck with Tiffany and Elsipad in the back and covered ground quickly. The other dolls, mostly Tiffany's, searched on foot. One Tiffany rounded a corner and found herself facing a shoe. She looked up. A sock was in the shoe, and an ankle was in the sock. She prepared herself for doll state, and then she realized she had encountered a mannequin. Every hour, just after Annabelle called out her "All's well," DJ drove the truck back to the toy department to report to Annabelle, Angelica, and Marisol. Can you imagine this group of dolls walking around the toy department in a store? On this spooky night, the dolls, boys and girls alike, saw spiders, moths, brown mice, and plenty of shadows obscuring who knew what. They also found in housewares, a dollhouse made entirely of gingerbread, which was fun to explore. But neither the Bailey boys nor the all-girl posse saw rats or anything suspicious. And in the morning, when they gathered in the toy department, they were fairly certain that no more dolls had gone missing. Annabelle was relieved to return to the glass cabinet. Chapter 12. Where have all the dollies gone? When the cleaning crew left the toy department the next night, the dolls waited only minutes before gathering in the aisle and forming their posses again. "Look how many of us are here!" exclaimed Tiffany, but her voice was hushed, since, by unspoken agreement, the dolls were keeping as quiet as possible. "Even more than last night," said Annabelle. "Every single one of us is here," agreed Elspeth, "except for the babies and the shut-ins. Even the buckets of Tiffany's and Bailey's have completely emptied, and you know the ones at the bottom don't always bother to climb out, but tonight they did." "My goodness," said Tiffany, "this is great. All right, let's divide ourselves into groups and continue searching and patrolling." And that's what the dolls did. Annabelle, keeping watch in the toy department once more, called out her "All's wells" on the hour. Ooh, if you guys have been doing tic-tac-toe, you have been working on time on the hour. As dawn approached, the posses began to return. "Nobody saw a thing," reported Tiffany. "Nothing suspicious, anyway." Annabelle watched the Tiffany's and Baileys line up at the buckets and hurl themselves inside. "I have a funny feeling," she said. "About what?" asked Marisol, who was waiting to lift Annabelle back into the case. Annabelle shrugged. "Just a funny feeling." "Funny good or funny bad?" Tiffany wanted to know. "Funny bad. Are you sure nobody saw anything?" "Nobody said they did," Tiffany replied. And Marisol added, "2 mice, some spiders, and a green insect. Really, Annabelle, nobody saw anything suspicious." "All right." Annabelle allowed Marisol to place her and Bobby and Tilly May in their spots in the case. Different spots than before, since Marcy had once again tried to clean up the case. Then Angelica was lifted onto a shelf and she whispered, "Maybe today is the day." And it nearly was. Late in the afternoon, during a rush, when so many people crowded the aisle that Annabelle couldn't see the play area beyond, she suddenly found herself looking into the face of a young woman who said excitedly, "Oh, Caroline, what about that one?" The woman pointed to Angelica, and a small voice from below, Annabelle couldn't lower her eyes to peek at Caroline, replied, "Yes, Mommy, she's perfect. She's just what I wanted. Can we take her out and look at her?" The woman inspected the case. "I guess so," she replied. "There's no sign that says we can't open it. Let me see if it's locked." She tugged at the handle, and the front of the case opened. "Goody!" exclaimed Caroline. So this must be Caroline right here where my thumb is. And remember, this is Angelica. A pair of hands reached for Angelica and gently removed her from her stand, then shut the front of the case. The woman leaned down to hand Angelica to Caroline. "Can I really have her, Mommy?" Annabelle heard Caroline say, but by then she could no longer see Caroline or her mother or Angelica. Not without moving her head. Annabelle wished she could cross her fingers for luck or turn and wave goodbye to her friend, but she contented herself with a silent chant. "Please let Angelica have a new home. Please let Angelica have a new home." She had just decided that today truly was Angelica's lucky day when she noticed Caroline's mother again, this time farther down the aisle, so that now Annabelle could see Caroline too. She assumed the little girl was Caroline, and neither Caroline nor her mother was carrying a McGinty shopping bag. Caroline was trying very hard not to cry. "I'm sorry," her mother said. "I'm very sorry, honey, but I couldn't read the price tag without my glasses. I didn't realize the dolly was so expensive. We simply can't afford to spend that much money on a doll." Annabelle heaved an imaginary sigh. Poor Angelica. She was to be returned to the glass case once again. Annabelle waited for Nell to bring her back, and she rehearsed what she would say to Angelica that evening after the cleaning crew had left. Something cheerful and uplifting like, "There's bound to be a little girl or boy who will want you. You'll find a home one day. I know you will." Annabelle was working on an analogy about how lots of good things take time. The writing of a book, the growth of a tree, the building of a home, and so forth, when she looked at the clock and realized that Angelica had been out of the case for more than half an hour. Why hadn't Nell brought her back? Maybe someone else had come along and bought her, reflected Annabelle. It seemed unlikely, but you never knew. Annabelle took a chance and cut her eyes, ever so slightly, to the left, trying to glimpse the checkout counter. She caught sight of the tip of Angelica's shoe. So she hadn't been sold. Well, it was a busy day, Annabelle thought. The aisle was still crammed with shoppers. Nell must have not had time to put Angelica away. Confident that she would see her friend soon, Annabelle returned to the speech she was rehearsing, determined to be ready to comfort Angelica that evening. When Marisol opened the case that night, the first thing she said to Annabelle was, "Where's Angelica?" "Over on the counter, I think," Annabelle replied, straining to see. Marisol turned her head in that direction. "No, she isn't." "Are you sure?" "Positive." Marisol glanced around the toy department. "I don't see her anywhere." "Well, that's strange," said Annabelle, and she told Marisol what had happened that afternoon. The mother decided Angelica was too expensive, so they left without her. "I saw them. The girl was almost crying, and she definitely didn't have a shopping bag with her." Why did you think Angelica was on the counter?" asked Bobby, who'd been listening. "You can't see the counter from the display case." Annabelle hesitated. "I just moved my eyes the teeniest little bit," she admitted. "Annabelle!" exclaimed Marisol and Bobby, and Marisol added, "In front of all the shoppers?" "No one was looking at me. Anyway, it was when the store was so busy. All the humans were hurrying about, bumping into each other, pulling things off the shelves. I really wanted to see what had happened to Angelica, and I saw the tip of her shoe. At least, I thought it was Angelica's shoe." "But where is she now?" asked Bobby. "Maybe someone shoplifted her," cried Annabelle. Marisol had deposited Annabelle, Bobby, and Tilly May on the floor and was now lifting dolls down from other shelves and displays. "Shoplifted who?" asked Tiffany, who was running across the aisle, followed by Elsipad and Dakota Jane. "Angelica," replied Annabelle, and she had to tell the story a second time. "She wasn't shoplifted," said DJ. "She lay on the counter for the rest of the afternoon." "Well, she isn't there now," said Annabelle. "Oh," she moaned, "I said this morning I had a funny feeling, and this is why. Angelica is the next missing doll." "We don't know that," said Elsipad. "Don't we?" countered Annabelle. "Where is she?" When no one could answer her question, she repeated, "She is the next missing doll." The toy department was a quiet place that night. Only a few posses went patrolling. The rest of the dolls stayed behind, talking quietly. There was no baseball game, no picnic. Many of the Tiffanys and Baileys elected to remain in the buckets. "They're probably safer that way," remarked Annabelle. It was just after midnight when Elsipad, riding in DJ's truck with Annabelle, Tiffany, and Tilly, said, "Have you guys seen the twins lately?" "No," replied the others. After a pause, Elsipad asked, "Well, when was the last time anyone saw them?" "I'm not sure," said Tiffany. "Maybe last night," suggested DJ. She leaned her head out the truck window to look at the dolls riding in the back and turned around again just in time to avoid running into a Funcraft Dream House. "Did they go out with the posses?" asked Annabelle. The other shrugged. I didn't pay much attention to the Bailey boys, admitted DJ. A hush fell. DJ let the truck wind down and everybody hopped out. Go ask around, said DJ, sounding serious. Annabelle and her friends hurried from one group of dolls to another, asking them if they knew where Vixamax and Viramax were, or when they remembered seeing them. No one had seen the twins since the last baseball game. That was 3 nights ago, whispered Annabelle. She looked up and down the aisle. Then she began to run from one row of shelves to another. What is it? What's the matter? asked Tiffany. Where are Bobby and Bailey? I saw them just a minute ago. Bobby! Bailey! Annabelle called, heart-pounding. Bobby! 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 called Tilly May. What? replied 2 muffled voices. A moment later, Bobby and Bailey poked their heads out of a plastic airplane. We thought you had disappeared, exclaimed Annabelle. No, you thought they had disappeared, said Tiffany. Can you blame me? Annabelle turned to her brother and Bailey. Now the twins are missing too, she said. Uh-oh. Bobby and Bailey plopped onto the floor. Annabelle looked around at the frightened faces of her brother and sister, of Tiffany and Bailey and DJ and Elsipad. Then she looked at the marks on the foreheads of Tiffany and Bailey. And then she put her hand to her mouth and gasped. Annabelle? said Elsipad. Annabelle drew in a deep breath. I just realized something, she said. The dolls who disappeared, at least the ones who have disappeared since we've been here, are, well, they have something in common. Tiffany frowned. They do? What? Annabelle paused. I don't want to be rude, she said, but they aren't perfect. None of us is perfect, said Elsipad primly. That's not what I mean. It was Annabelle's turn to frown. Think about it. The Mom Funcraft doll had that mark on her back and the drawn-on eyelashes. Angelica's smile had worn off. And Viramax had that, whatever you call it, that glitch in his system. What about Vixamax? asked Elsipad. Annabelle frowned. I don't know. It's true. Nothing's wrong with him, but it's interesting that he's Viramax's twin, isn't it? And something is wrong with Viramax, and they're both missing. For a few moments, everyone was quiet. Then Bailey said, We don't know that the twins weren't sold. But we know that Mom and Angelica weren't sold, said Annabelle, and you have to admit it's strange that there's something wrong with almost all the missing dolls. Yes, said Bailey uncomfortably. It must be rats, said Bobby. Rats are taking the dolls. Rats that choose imperfect dolls, replied Annabelle. Annabelle's not perfect either, is she? Everyone was silent again, this time for so long that finally Tiffany said, let me read that again. Everyone was silent again, this time for so long that finally Tilly said, I thought only 3-year-old girl dolls were allowed to play the quiet game. Annabelle smiled and drew her sister close. What do you think is happening to these imperfect dolls? asked Dakota Jane. Annabelle shook her head. I don't know. Maybe they're being discarded? Discarded? Yelped Elsipad. Maybe, said Annabelle again. And then she added, Tiffany, you have to rub those initials off of your forehead and Bailey's. If my theory is right, they make you targets. Tiffany opened her mouth. She closed it again. Then she opened her mouth and said quietly, Annabelle, what about your hair? Chapter 13 is called A Close Call. So tune in on Monday for chapters 13 and 14 and see what else is happening. Have they solved the mystery of the missing dolls? And will they ever find a way out of McGinty's store?